everyone, and welcome back to the Arsenal Fan Theory podcast. Tonight we've got a Man City Arsenal preview in store for you guys, along with Dean. Dean, how you doing?
Hey, Brendan, good thanks to you, man. Excited to be back.
It's good, it's good. And Michael's also here to join us today.
Hi, everyone.
All right, so I think our first episode was quite long, so let's get started. Dean, I want to jump straight to you. How do you think, the Arteta Pep Guardiola situation is going to impact the game, and especially Arteta's preparations for as big a game as the City game?
Yeah, no, Brendan, as you've seen, every news outlet or news agency is speaking exactly that, the apprentice versus, the master. And that is what Pep Guardiola is, and it's exactly what that's going to be. It's going to be a tactical battle. I think they're going to definitely will try to outsmart each other using different tactics they wouldn't before because of their familiarity with each other. They're not, if they stick with what they normally do and the other one has something up their sleeve, you have no chance in a sense of keeping up with that. So I think they're both going to have something up their sleeve, something different tactically. Yeah, it's going to be very interesting seeing Arteta going up against, Pep.
Yeah, what I've also noticed, I don't know if you've watched, both managers had their pre-game presses already. We're recording, it's currently Tuesday night, and the game's tomorrow night for those of you that are listening. It was quite interesting. Both managers, pointed out that they know exactly the style of play that the other manager has because they've worked so closely under each other. And what was interesting, Mike, I think that Arteta wasn't very keen to give anything away, especially with players available for this game, because we haven't seen players like Xhaka and Torreira feature in the friendlies, but he didn't rule them out for this game.
Yeah, well, Arteta was very vague around the subject about how we might play or who might play. So I think he's trying to keep everything for himself, not to give anything away, not to give Guardiola idea about anything that he's planning for the game. Yeah, and I also expect Guardiola to bring something different that he normally would. Because, like you said, he straight came out and said that Arteta knows Man City inside and out. He knows all the game plans. He knows all the players because they work so closely together.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting dynamic. I'm definitely looking forward to see what Guardiola is going to bring out tactically. Dean, do you think you've got any insights, or could you give us your best guess on what type of formation we might see from Guardiola, what type of tweak he might do to try and throw Arteta off his trail?
Yeah, I can only give my insight, of course, Brendan, but I think that's the difficult, for Arteta's side, tactically, he can play so much more with the team. Whereas, in what I mean is, City's team chooses itself almost every day. There's not too many changes. Yeah, I agree with you defensively. If this one's fit, that one, and what's your midfield. But at the end of the, sorry, what's your wing pairing? But at the end of the day, his team pretty much chooses itself. So it'll be interesting to see. But at the end of the day, City have the quality. So, maybe in a sense of a formation setup, he'll go with pretty much what he normally goes with, which is, his 4-5-1, with the holding midfielder, of course, a lot more attacking wingers. But, there's other ways you can change the game tactically or even technically differently. In technique wise, I talk about, shouldering players down certain ways. You know, maybe he looks to press us in areas where he's pointed out weaknesses in our team. Maybe he presses us into those areas and picks the ball off us, and then has worked a way to counterattack from that. So, to me, his formation is going to be this. It, I see that formation staying pretty much the same, but tactically and technique wise, inside the game, team tactics or individual tactics and techniques, that he will definitely do something differently. But what that is like I say, he's maybe found a weakness of ours where he's going to press us, and then has figured a way to counterattack us on that.
Well, it's interesting you talk about the in-game tactics because I remember the December game we lost 2-0, I believe. There were big talks regarding Arteta's influence on the tactical formation and the tactics within the game, that he had, because he told the players in game where Arsenal weaknesses are and where to attack Arsenal, and in the end it worked where they used like Sterling and was Sane still available then? I can't remember to
I'm not too sure,
to overflow our
but
midfield.
yeah, I
Where
think Sonny was out quite early in the season. But no, look, I agree with you, and that's this way it's going to work for us this time. Like Michael mentioned earlier, and like you're mentioning now, he knows City in and out. And back then, in that defeat against City earlier in the season, the 2-0 defeat, like you said, everybody praised Arteta for it because he knew Arsenal in and out and ways to work it. So now he knows City in and out, but the quality on show at City. Not saying that we don't have the quality, we do have the quality, but it's going to take something different tactically, and spiritually. It's going to have to be a big performance from
yes.
Arsenal to get anything out of this.
No, look, I agree. I just all I want to see is a team fighting for the badge. Even if we lose, as long as we put in a performance, I think all supporters would be happy, no matter what the result. Obviously, not a thrashing, but just a competitive game. Mike, um, where do you think Arteta might look to win the midfield battle? Because, like we just mentioned, he pointed out as that was one of Arsenal's key weaknesses when he played against us. Maybe which player do you think he'd task to cover someone like a De Bruyne on the day?
Well, Bren, I think every Arsenal fan could be honest with themselves here that City definitely have a much more dominant midfield over Arsenal. So I don't think it will come down to the quality of the players. I think, like you just mentioned, he will task certain players to try and stop the quick transition into counter attack and to stop certain players, especially De Bruyne. I'm hoping we see Lucas Torreira because that is something that is exceptional at. He's good at sniffing out a tackle and just always being at the right position at the right time. So I think Arteta might look to play two defensive midfielders and just try and stop that counter attack that City do so well.
I also believe he'll have two defensive-minded midfielders. So I'm leaning a bit towards he's probably going to go if fit Xhaka and maybe a Guendouzi midfield, just based on the friendlies. Guendouzi's been quite involved in the preseason. Or I keep on saying preseason friendlies because it feels so, it feels like a preseason. But yeah, he used Guendouzi quite a bit in the friendlies in this build-up. So, Dean, I don't know. What do you think the midfield options are, and what do you think Arteta might? I know we talked about this in our previous episode, but what do you think Arteta's going to settle on?
Like you said, we've had a debate or two about this before. Um, it's difficult, if these oaks are not fit, not raring to go, it's difficult to see them getting in. But I agree with Michael on that you need somebody to combat De Bruyne. It's difficult at the end of the day because you can see where you try to pick out or you try to man mark certain players and you leave others open, or you leave spaces on the field open. But now I'm going a bit off topic, but yeah, our midfield pairing, I I would love to see a Shaka and Torreira. That I think is our strongest pairing, especially against an attacking minded team. But yeah, leading up to like you're saying these preseason games, or I don't know what we call them because it feels like that. These, we haven't seen them feature for even a second. So does that mean that they're not included in the first game? I don't know, because Arteta hasn't ruled them out in his team news. I know we've discussed it, that the only one player that is left out is Chambers.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. So um, otherwise, I agree. Guendouzi's. I've heard news that he's started impressing Arteta once again. I think we mentioned that in the last episode. He's yeah. He's coming along. So he's a player we've all admired. His attitude was something that Arteta picked on, which I feel Arteta had all the right to. He snuffed Maitland-Niles out. He snuffed even Ceballos. Ceballos returned to full training and never made it to the first team for quite a while. So I think that's a strong character in Arteta, and it's good to see Guendouzi coming back. So let's say if the strongest two of Torreira and Xhaka don't meet, or are not fit enough to play, I'd like to see a Guendouzi and a Maitland-Niles in there. That's a lot of energy. Those
Yeah,
two would work up and down for you all day long.
and it's something I think that Arteta definitely tested out in the friendlies, like he's mentioned, which was quite exciting to see that a young dynamic midfield. Mike, but let's quickly go to our back line. I think there's a big debate regarding the Tierney, Saka, Kolasinac uh, selection, and we also know that Saka is currently, on the last 12 months of his contract. Do you think that's going to influence his decision, or do you think he's just going to go based on form? What do you think? uh, Keeping in mind the contract situation.
Well, Brian, the first thing that I want to mention is that from the news that I've read is that Bukayo Saka's contract is of a very high priority to Arsenal to renew it. They regard him very highly, as do the fans, obviously. And yeah, so they're working, well, what I hear, they're working hard on to agreeing a deal. But what I'm hoping to see and what I expect to see is now that Kieran Tierney is back, he's had a few months back from injury now. Unfortunately, it was probably a few weeks after lockdown that he was back fully fit. So I think he's got had a lot of time to work with the team now and do his individual fitness sessions. And Arteta regards him very highly. So I hope and I expect to see him against City.
Well, I I also certainly do hope so, but that also leaves Saka on the bench. But I think for this game, Arteta is going to lean into experience. Like I mentioned before, I think we're going to see Aubameyang, Lacazette, Nelson combination up top. Dean, do you think that Leroy Sané might be making the way back against Arsenal, or do you think it's too soon because he's also now back in full training with the City team?
Yeah, look, it comes down again to how fit is the Oak, but that could be something to throw into Arsenal's. We were talking about technically and tactically, but there's a tactical change, changing personnel, changing a different way, because of course Arteta is going to break down each and every, maybe not to the full extent, but he's going to break down each and every position and the strengths and the players he expects to start there and what they would be doing and counteract that. So it's probably too early. I don't see him playing the first game. In my opinion, I see Sterling and Riyad Mahrez on the right hand side with Sergio Aguero up front.
Well, I mean, it's quite insane to think you have to sit someone like Sana out, but you've got backup like Mares, for instance, to take his place, or Sterling, depending on which flank they play. Just the depth of quality, it's scary. And I'm keeping in mind the new five subs rule, Mike. I'm just wondering, do you think Arsenal has what it takes to go the full 90 with them? Because they're probably going to bring these players on in the 60th, 70th minute, fresh legs, and run our defenders ragged.
Well, Bren, I think actually the 9 substitutions on the bench and 5 subs per game rule actually plays a little bit in favour to Arsenal because, like you said, I think Arteta would go with a bit more of an experienced squad for the starting 11. But we've got a lot of quality with our young players, which would be fresh legs during the whole 90 minutes, you know. So when he has 5 subs to make during the whole of the second half, I think it plays into Arsenal's favour a bit. We can try, hopefully, just to snack a lead against City, and then he can get the young legs up to just defend, you know, and run up and down the pitch the whole time.
Well, speaking about young legs, I feel that we've got a lot of quality and we need to hold on to them and we need to develop them. And if you look at the current situation, concentrating on the youth academy and the youth squad might be very important for teams going forward. But going back to the City game, Dean Arteta had a big. He emphasized the importance of Willock and Nketiah to his plans. Does that maybe give a bit of insight to what he's thinking in the short term, or is it just reassuring those two players in the long term?
Look, like you both mentioned, there's the new 5 sub rule, 9 on the bench. So, you know, we'll check back and we'll jump on the question now. Like Mike says, I do agree it does play into our favor, but as much as it plays into our favor, it plays into City. So
Yeah.
like Brendan said, they've got a very deep bench, and they've got more of an experienced bench than our youth. But I agree with Michael that youth of our bench will run these Oaks up and down, and that comes back to Brendan's question. With Willock and Nikitia, maybe it's not speaking in a sense of starting, but the impact that they can have when they come in. Because, with these players having it in mind that they can get subbed, they need to run their socks off if it's an instruction. So they run their socks off for 60 minutes, and then that means they've run the other players or the other oak in the position, tracking him and such just as much. And then comes on a new Nikitia or a Willock, and this kid starts running all of a sudden and, breaking away from you, gaining space from you. And this is when, of course, as you see in the end of the games, players get tired, Oaks gain space, and goals are scored. So this could be maybe what he's leaning towards, or that he's going to maybe look at starting these players that they're ready. But I do see a future for these two players.
Yeah, I think, like we mentioned throughout this show, that the future is bright if we can hold on to all the players. Mike, I want to switch to the right hand of the field, where we've got Bellerin most likely going to start for us as right back, but who's going to play ahead of him? I see a lot of debates going on for the Nelson Pepe
Hmm.
swap. So obviously, both players give you a different dimension. Even though I feel that Nelson has much more skills up his sleeve that he hasn't shown in the last few games, he's put his head down and worked hard. But which one do you think would benefit Arsenal in a game like City?
Yeah, well, Brent, they obviously both still young players. What Nelson's 2021 and Pepe himself's only 24. And they both have skill in abundance, you know. Although Pepe does like to take on the players a bit more, Nelson likes to track back or he helps track back and defend a bit more. But I agree with you. Nelson does have a lot more up his sleeve than he's been showing this season. But I'm sure the more we get to see him, the more that side of his style will come out, you know. Um, but in all of our previous conversations, like I agreed with you, I said I think we would see Aubameyang, Lacazette, and Nelson. Just because Arteta does seem to like Nelson and favour him a little bit, but after the last week, what I've seen in the news and the press conference, it seems like Arteta does regard Nketiah very highly as well, and also likes him a lot as well. So I'm going to change my answer of my front three. I think we'll see Pepe, Aubameyang, and Nketiah.
Well, that will be very interesting. especially going on. Nketiah is a very raw talent. Yes, he's got great finishing ability, but I feel he needs to get a bit more involved in the game. Um, he tends to fade out of the game and just get involved when it's goal box action. Dean, based on the last 2 days, the last few press conferences, we've seen a bit more training videos. Would you change your score prediction from the 2-1 City result that we had in the first podcast?
No, I would keep my scoreline the same. Maybe, it could be a higher scoreline. As we've spoken about, Arsenal doesn't have the surest of defenses, and City's defense hasn't played for long enough together. Talking about Laporte being out for most of the season and having, Fernandinho coming from midfield into defense. It hasn't been the most assured of defenses. So maybe the only thing that would change is um, the height of the score. So I'm going to go with a 3-2 to City.
Well, I'm going to keep my predictions the same. I think it's going to be quite a high scoring game, but I'm hoping for the best. I think it's going to be a high scoring draw. And I believe I said 2-2. I think I'm going to stick with that. Mike, any change in predictions?
Yes, I've changed my predictions again. Well, I firstly said I can definitely see a 2-1 City happening. But then the optimistic fan inside me said 2-1 to Arsenal. And now I'm going to say something that not only the both of you, but every Arsenal, City, and football fan will laugh at me for. But there's something inside me. I feel it. A good old fashioned 1-0 to the Arsenal.
Well, uh,
Well,
I,
yeah, you can see by my reaction.
yeah, I think that's quite optimistic on the best of days. I
Yeah.
personally feel if Arsenal sneak a win, it's going to be, like I said, a high scoring game. They might sneak a goal. But definitely, I don't see a 1-0 to the Arsenal, but you never know. I'm just having a look at the table. We're currently sitting on ninth with 40 points with a game in hand. If we win this, we'll go level on points with Wolves and Sheffield, and our goal difference would be better, so we'd probably jump into sixth place. Would that put us back into contention with the Champions League spots if we do actually win this game?
That's
Um.
also, sorry, Mike, that's also depending on Sheffield because Sheffield also have a game in hand.
Oh, that's correct. They also have a game in hand. They're playing
Yes,
the game
and
beforehand.
we also need to keep in mind that United and Spurs are also playing this weekend. So one thing that no Arsenal fan ever wants to say, but we need Spurs to win this weekend so that the top five race would be a lot closer. Otherwise, United would start to pull away a bit.
I was also seeing Leicester. I don't know exactly how many points Leicester is there, Brendan. If we win out, let's put this all into hypothetical that Arsenal beat City.
Mm.
You know what it changes for us, and City's ban get upheld. Okay. So Leicester, I know, still has to play four of the top six in their last, in their remaining fixtures. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So Leicester, the games they've got left, they've got Watford, Brighton, Chelsea, Everton, Palace, Arsenal, Bournemouth, Sheffield United, Tottenham, and Man United. So yeah, they've got quite
So
a
there's
few.
four of the top six there
Yeah,
because you've got Man United, Tottenham, Sheffield, and Arsenal.
yeah,
I'm including Sheffield because they
and
such good
Chelsea.
form. And Chelsea, sorry. So there, you've got five tough fixtures, and what's 5 points? I mean, five games, 15 points.
Yeah.
And
So
what are we behind them at the moment?
so they're currently on 53. So we fought 13 points behind them with the game in hand. So it might be 10 points.
Drop to
If
10 if we win.
yeah.
So I don't know if we should completely, because what's Chelsea there? Chelsea's 3 points ahead of Man United.
Chelsea's on 48, and they still got Man City. They've got Leicester. They've got Sheffield. They've got Liverpool to play, and they've got Wolves to play. So, but I mean, we've also got quite a
We've
tough
also got
ride in.
three. I think we got three or four. Hey,
Yeah,
just check there.
We've got four. top six sides still have to play
Yeah,
at
we've
So
got.
you see, we've all got it. So at the end of the day, whoever comes out as the most consistent team is going to make it,
Yeah.
and even possibly all the way up into top three.
Mm.
So I think we can, because Brendan, sorry, do correct me if I'm wrong. If we win our game, we'll be 5 points behind fourth place.
Yeah, if we win our game, we'll be 5 points by fourth
So
place.
these are all hypotheticals.
Yes.
Arsenal now need to win almost every, if not every game, till the end of the season to have a chance of breaking into top four.
Mm.
If City's ban get upheld, we've got an even better chance. But United were on good form before lockdown happened, and football. But so there's a lot of Oaks in contention here. As much as we don't like Tottenham and we won't speak highly of Tottenham, Heung-min Song is coming, is back in full training. Harry Kane is back in full training. I don't know if
Yes.
he's ready for a full game, but so
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of things that we can't predict. Obviously, this lockdown. If we look at Bayern Munich, I mean, look at the Bundesliga. The first few games definitely gave a key pointer to how the season was going to play out, because I think after the first three games, everyone saw the quality kick in from Bayern, and the other teams starting to fall off a bit. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see after the first three games. I want to touch on the final thing regarding the City game. Then we'll end section one. I think we just need to touch transfers, because there was so much said regarding our two key players in the press conferences. But I want both of you to maybe just give me a key battle on the field. So one of their players that we need to watch out for, and one of our players they need to watch out for. Dean, we'll start with you.
okay. On the City side, I think there's so many to choose from. The most obvious is, probably Kevin De Bruyne or Sergio Aguero, or even just the combination between the two. Sergio Aguero. I'm sorry, Kevin De Bruyne feeding Sergio Aguero. Yeah. So we touched on it earlier. With having a midfield that can run. You know. So I think that's going to be the key battle. Who per se does it? If it's one person in particular, or if it's more of a team effort. I don't know, but I see the Sergio Aguero and Kevin De Bruyne link. Not to mention, the two wingers, what link they have with both those players. So I think that's going to be the strongest of cities there. Definitely the De Bruyne and the Aguero link. On our side, clear danger man is Aubameyang, as we've seen that his scoring record speaks for itself. How City is going to handle that is by depriving us of the ball, or depriving Aubameyang of the ball. The less Aubameyang has of the ball, there's nothing you can do without the ball. It's kind of obvious.
Yeah, so that's what gets a bit interesting with the Ozil inclusion in the team, because obviously Arteta would feel Ozil would be his best avenue to get to Oba, get the ball to Oba, get him in attacking positions. So that might be his thinking, in selecting the final 11. Mike, what's your predictions? Where are the key battles going to happen on the game tomorrow?
Yeah, well, Brian, like Dean said, the clear danger man would be Kevin De Bruyne, and that's what I'd go for. But another key battle might be whoever goes up against, who we assume would be Hector Bellerin. His defense has come into question over the past. He hasn't been back to full fitness for quite a while now. So yeah, I think that might be a quite interesting battle as well. And again, I agree with Dean. Aubameyang is our clear danger man, but I think I'll go a bit for an unexpected answer. If Mr. Nicolas Pepe starts, I think he would be our danger man in this game.
Okay, I'm gonna go a bit left field. I think both of you are pretty accurate in your predictions, but I personally feel that the game can be won and lost depending on who City put in their CDM position, either Fernandinho or De Bruyne. The few breakdowns I've watched about City games, a lot of what happens, cycles through their CDM. So I think if we can pounce on the CDM, make sure that he doesn't distribute the ball quickly. We can cut off the supply lines to players like a, a De Bruyne, a Sane, a Sterling, Aguero. So I think it's going to be essential for our number 10, our CAM on the day, to be on the CDM's heels the whole day, so he doesn't have time to spread the ball.
Yeah, well, Bren, I agree with you with that, but like you said, Arteta would probably go for Ozil because he is regarded as our most creative avenue in the club. But if you need a number 10 that's going to be on the CDM's heels all the time, then it would probably be Ceballos or Willock starting, I guess.
Yeah. No, no, well,
No,
we,
I agree with both of you guys there. It needs the number 10 needs to work in this game, or we're gonna have big problems. You can't allow the guy back in that space there. You know, like you say, that holding midfielder over there just to spread balls. We can't. So and that's where I agree with Michael. Ceballos would be the guy to do that job for you. Whether Arteta goes for Ozil or Ceballos, yeah, I'd probably pick Ozil as well. Seeing him going for Ozil, trying to still make Ozil work because we stuck with him till his contract runs out.
for at least another year. So,
Yeah.
but I think we have seen a bit of an improvement in Ozil over the last, or under Arteta especially. He's been tracking back. He's been closing spaces. His positioning, just closing off passing lanes has been much better, I believe. So, it, yes, it might not be ideal, but I don't think we'll we won't see the usual Ozil. I think we'll see someone running around, really giving
Mm, mm.
his 110%.
Which he has been a bit more under Arteta.
Yes, yeah,
Well, his running stats under Arteta are actually quite scary.
Mm.
You must go look at those running stats. Some games he's run more than any other player. The fans, we don't look at this, and this is a big change under Arteta. And like you say, he's had the break now. He's had the chance to get fit, recoup his body. Rest and recovery. Load and recovery. The recovery is just as important as your load, especially for a player like Ozil. I don't see him being able to play 50, 60 games a season anymore. He's more of a 30, 40 game
Yeah.
a season player. And,
And,
the more you rotate him, the better the more you're going to get out of it. The fresher you've got Ozil, the more you're going to get out of him.
yeah, and the fans tend to give Ozil a lot of stick these days about he has not been creating as much assists as he used to. Um, for example, he's only had one assist under Arteta. But yes, I looked at the stats earlier in the week. He's created he's created plenty of goal scoring opportunities. I'll lie to you if I give you the numbers. But the creativity is there. We've just been having a problem with that final product uh, these days.
Yes, yeah, sadly, that's what we look at the end of the day is assists, not created chances. And created chances, what it is an assist without the other player putting it in the back of the net. There's no difference between that assist and the the chance created, except the player putting it in the back of the net. It's the exact same opportunity. So, yeah, those stats in that way can be misleading. Ozil can, like you say, I would not know it now, but let's spitball a bit here. But let's say he's created 30 chances in the last
I think it was
7 games.
25, but yeah, it was
So
25, 30. Sounds about right.
in how many games, if that's 3 to 5 chances, that's 3 to 5 possible assists a game, which is very high. So, 5 chances created is very high per game. If you've got that stat behind you, that's massive.
Yeah,
So I'm not
no.
sure exactly what it is.
Yeah, I read an article yesterday. I think it was 25. Correct me if I'm wrong, in the comment section, but that's to the best of my knowledge.
Now we
But
will we will start pulling up more of these stats and having
Yeah.
them.
yeah, yeah. So obviously, we don't really have a lot of equipment at the moment, so it's difficult to use something as recording and have something to pull up stats and stuff like that. So the better we, or the longer we're in the game, the more code we'll get, the better we'll get. Right. Anything else you guys want to touch on regarding the City game before we head over to section two?
No.
Well, yes, Bren. I'm not sure if you wanted to keep this for section two, but the the one question we had to touch on this episode was from Steph Garlett's about Felipe Coutinho and what do you think will happen regarding the situation of him coming to Arsenal.
Yeah, well, I think we need to touch on transfers, like I mentioned, but I think let's take a quick 5 minute break and discuss all the transfer news in section two.